because
Yes.
the Meh train continues and it rides into the station at Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah. So this finally dropped on Netflix last week or the week before. Um, and it's the follow up to Afterlife, and I had a really hard time liking this movie.
Right, I would struggle to actually call it bad. It's almost more just bland than anything else.
Yeah, it was bland. Yeah, and I, we were talking kind of like about it, as we were watching it, and we kind of had a hard time pinning down just who like the quote unquote main character is, because it just kind of bounces around different people for the most part.
Right, and a movie with an ensemble cast can work, but the previous movie was very focused on what's her name?
Oh, what is her name?
This is not a good sign.
Yeah,
Uh,
oh God, what was, yeah,
I'm pulling up IMDb. Don't worry.
yeah,
Uh, it's here.
it's Spang Egon's granddaughter.
Phoebe Spengler.
Yeah, Phoebe, or
That's
yeah,
right, Phoebe. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so Phoebe was very much the focus of the previous movie,
yeah.
since she was, the most like her departed grandfather. Like, her brother was around, but he clearly had different traits than she did,
Hmm.
and she was kind of like the driving force behind a lot of it.
Yeah, and of course the fact that she even you know resembled him in greatly with the
Yes.
hair and the glasses and
Right, and the previous movie kind of it worked well as a love letter to the previous parts of the franchise. And it also kind of worked on that sort of 80s. It almost felt like a Goonies movie than a Ghostbusters movie with a group of kids trying to solve the problem.
right, yeah, uh, yeah, and it was kind of like I think it kind of they tried to kind of tie it with like like our generation that grew up with the cartoon show, the real Ghostbusters, and we're like, oh, well, I want to be a Ghostbuster when I'm a kid, and then they showed the
Yep.
kids being Ghostbusters. Yeah,
Right. It, it was kind of a one-shot nostalgia bait, and like I ate the bait happily, even though, truth be told, I don't have that much nostalgia for the Ghostbusters because I watched a few episodes of the cartoon back in the day, drank plenty of Ecto Cooler. Uh,
yeah,
but I never really saw the movie until I was older, and I thought it was just kind of all right, which I know is heresy, but
yes, heretic, heretic, heretic.
so I would say the fact that the previous movie made me care at all was like a mark in its favor.
Yeah. Plus, it was directed by Jason Reitman, the son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the first two movies.
Yeah, whereas this one was directed by Gil Keenan, which is not a name that I recognize.
Yeah, I didn't
Although
recognize
the
it either.
although the Reitmans were involved with writing the movie.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so this guy's movies he's known for are Monster House, City of Ember. Then
I think.
he
Yeah.
took some time off. Poltergeist, Scream the TV series, A Boy Called Christmas.
Ooh, not a great filmography there.
No, I would say so. To kind of break down I think we're kind of delaying talking about the plot a bit because
Yeah,
it's weirdly it's a bit overstuffed.
it is. Yeah.
I think the problem they had was that they probably had binding contracts with the kid characters introduced in the previous movie that they had to be included. Like, like this is a 3 movie deal or whatever, and they had to be included. But they also wanted to make sure that the living Ghostbusters were around too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Ray and I would say, yeah, like Dan Aykroyd had a much larger role in this movie than he did in Afterlife.
Right, and you also have Ernie Hudson basically being the Nick Fury of this Ghost Enterprises or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're a big Bill Murray fan and you're hoping to see a lot of him in this movie, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yeah, no, he's barely in this thing.
Yeah,
You get more of Janine than you do of Peter.
yeah,
um, so you know what? Okay, so non-spoiler thoughts. If you really, really loved the previous one, you really want to see where the characters were going, give this one a watch.
yeah,
There's some neat special effects that we'll get into more detail on later. It's not hateable. It's just like it very much feels like a movie you would turn on in the background while you're doing other things.
yeah. And Ninja asks if the movie was more of a nostalgia fest than the last one. Not so much, I don't think.
No, I would say no. It like it brought in some familiar elements, but it didn't really do much with them.
Yeah, yeah. They did bring back Walter Peck.
Right? Who's gone from being the head of the EPA to the mayor?
Yeah, that's well, that actually kind of fits with the way our government works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess we should get into the plot.
Yeah.
So the movie picks up what 2 years after the previous movie.
Yep.
Was it 2 or 3 years? I think it was 2 years.
Uh,
Um,
Some small number of years,
yes, yeah.
and they've taken up residence in the old firehouse and are out busting ghosts.
Right. Yeah, and the ghost busting team consists of Paul Rudd's character, Gary, and then of course the Spangler, uh, Kelly Spangler,
Um,
Egon's daughter, yeah, the mom, and then the two kids, Phoebe and Trevor. And Trevor's played by Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, which is kind of interesting because so he's been not one but two '80s nostalgia things.
yeah.
And he actually in season 2 of the show, he and the and his little group of friends, they actually win as Ghostbusters on Halloween. So
Ha.
yeah, but yeah, so they're out busting ghosts, and then things don't go well. They cause some damage, and Walter Peck's not happy, and then they find out, of course, Phoebe is 15, so she's underage and she can't be doing ghost busting.
Right. It makes sense. It's one of those things where uh, you don't necessarily want to think about it because you're just supposed to be enjoying the adventure, but yeah, realistically, it's horribly irresponsible to let her go out and bust ghosts,
Yeah.
even though she has a talent for it. Uh, then, when they're turning in their most recent ghost capture, they discover that the firehouse has reached capacity.
Yes, which I've always wondered about, by the way. Like, just how much storage space is in that thing?
Right, like the ghosts clearly can occupy real space. Like, do they take up space when they're captured? Question mark.
Yeah.
And so there's like multiple subplots going on here. Like each character gets a thing,
Mhm.
or half a thing. So I guess let's talk about Phoebe, the seeming main character. She's goes off and is alone, and she runs into a ghost named Melody, played by Emily Ann Lind or Alan Lind, excuse me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they become friends? Question mark.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic between those two.
Well, the thing is that Phoebe's character, I think, is clearly being played as some flavor of being on the spectrum and just like awkward in general. It's like busting ghosts is her thing,
Yeah. Yeah, and science and mechanics, yeah.
right? It's like suddenly losing those leaves her a bit adrift. And then she runs into this ghost who is just like she's like, has a 1920s style. So they try to do this thing where they are buddies, question mark.
Yeah.
But like I don't really feel any chemistry between them. Some people interpreted it as a romantic relationship, though apparently that's been clarified by the filmmakers that they were just close friends. I I think that the reason that some people outside of shippers seeing relationships everywhere,
Yeah.
uh, I think the reason that some people might have seen a romantic thing is that otherwise it's like, what do these two have in common with each other?
Yeah, not a whole hell of a lot.
Right? Like, and you do eventually figure out that Melody is working with the villains to try and trap her,
Mhm.
or I should say, to try to get like access to the good guys.
Yeah.
So that is like plot one. Plot two is, I don't even want to call it a plot or a subplot. Series of events that happens is Trevor trying to catch Slimer, because remember Slimer?
Yeah. He's still in the firehouse. Yeah. Yeah,
This
yeah.
really doesn't go anywhere, though Slimer does show up in the last act. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's also a whole bunch of little marshmallow Stay Puff people, which are involved with plot three, which is, in my opinion, the best part of the movie, which is Dan Aykroyd running a, he's running a curio shop, supernatural shop,
Yeah.
with Logan Kim, aka Podcast from the previous movie, as his live-in slave labor, I guess you would call him.
Yeah, intern slash producer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his YouTube channel,
yeah,
and yeah, that had some funny bits in it.
yeah, yeah. I like the word when Ray's like, "Oh, and my producer wants me to remind you to like and subscribe."
Yeah, Uh, I would say that Dan is the best part of this movie, just because he brings his own weird on the spectrum anti-charm to it's he is weird. Like if I was to describe Dan Aykroyd to you, it would always sound kind of insulting, but I always like him when he shows up.
Yeah,
So it's like there are just some people who have a weird sort of, it's like the charisma wraps around so far that you pass zero and come back into positive again.
yeah, yeah, and well, yeah, and this is like his wheelhouse too, because he's really into all that paranormal ghost stuff. That's his bread and butter. So yeah, that's he's really in his element in this movie.
Yeah. Uh, and when they discover that the house has been, or that the firehouse is starting to run out of capacity, they bring in Ernie Hudson, which introduces the fourth element of the movie, which is basically the setup for the larger ghost universe that they're trying to make happen.
Yeah, yeah, they've got a bigger containment unit for the ghosts, and they've got them in cells, and they're studying them like lab animals, and yeah,
In a setup that clearly nothing is going to escape. No, no, that would be crazy talk. What are you talking
right,
about?
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's very predictable, and it feels like the people who wrote the movie watched the Avengers a few too many times as like their example of how to set up a cinematic universe.
Yeah, yeah, and they kind of putting the kind of getting a little ahead of themselves. Much the same way with the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that we watched for the show not a few months back.
Yeah, like, I would say this is better than that, but that's partially because they had the previous movie to draw on. There are just too many characters. Like Celeste O'Connor's character, Lucky from the previous movie, she just has nothing to do.
Yeah,
She's just part of Ernie Hudson's workplace, and that is the extent of her character.
yeah, and then you also had that British guy.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting him.
Yeah, he's just kind of there.
Uh, and then the fifth element is you have Kumail Nanjiani as Nadim, who is just a generally unlikable character.
Yeah,
Uh, he is introduced to the story where he is trying to sell some of his grandmother's knickknacks to Dan Aykroyd for surprisingly small amounts of money.
yes, yeah, and amongst them is this orb, uh, which turns out to be like almost like a containment unit for a very powerful spirit, and it's this like was a Sumerian god or something. I can't remember what he
Like
was.
like South Asian god
South Asian
who
god.
was
Yeah.
who like was the god of frost, and he was going to destroy the world until a bunch of basically firebenders showed up and Nadim is like the last of them.
Yes, yeah, and he shows off the this little hidden room in his grandmother's apartment, and I will say the look of it kind of reminded me of Hellraiser. Some of the patterns and everything. I'm like, oh, hopefully
Yeah,
there's no puzzle box in there. You know?
yeah, it's like a big chunk of the last part of the movie is him trying to learn to firebend so they can help fight off this monster.
Yeah, yeah,
But the character himself is just, like I said, unlikable because he's just vaguely slimy or
yeah,
vaguely like he's vaguely shallow and greedy. And I could see like the character working if he'd had more time to develop.
yeah, yeah. Although I'll be honest, I don't really think he's all that funny.
The actor, yeah,
The actor,
he,
yeah,
his performance feels like it's on the verge of comedic, but not quite there in this movie.
yeah,
Of course, you also suffered through the Eternals, which he was apparently in.
yeah. He was in that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That might be prejudicing me a bit against him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of prejudice, Patton Oswalt is in this movie. I keep forgetting he was in this movie.
Well, yeah, he's just in the one part of the movie, and he's just not really. It's kind of it was a bit of that was the exposition dump about the bad guy, the main villain.
Yeah. So now there's some other weirdness too. Like at one point, Phoebe's plotline is about trying to like get back into her own, but also some family drama because Paul Rudd is her stepdad basically. And
Mhm.
sorry, I fell asleep there just thinking about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
um, and like she feels like she's isolated, so at one point she decides, I'll go be a ghost with Melody. Like, isn't that called suicide? No, we have this machine that extracts ghosts from objects, so clearly it'll work on a person.
yeah, yeah. That part was odd. I didn't like that at all.
No, especially
Yeah,
because there's no lasting consequences of it besides this being used to unlock the monster.
yeah,
So, and that's the long and short of the movie. There's like now let's get into where the movie's strengths really lie. I feel like this is a pretty good special effects showcase.
yeah. It is. Yeah, yeah. The ghosts have gotten a lot better, obviously, as the CGI has improved over the last 40 years since the first movie, as well as like the look of the proton streams and everything. Yeah.
Yep. And they have some clever ghost ideas, like this one that just possesses inanimate objects
Oh yeah,
that just bounces around between them.
yeah,
Um, that dragon-looking thing there on the poster is it's fairly cool. It
yeah,
shows up a couple of times. It has a neat sort of Asian dragon character design.
yeah, yeah,
When they had the exposition dump about the ancient ice god, I liked the sort of faux stop motion style they were using for the cave drawings they were using to, or cave drawings or hieroglyphs or whatever you want to call them
yeah,
that they were using to show things off.
yeah, yeah. That was cool. Yeah.
Uh, And then I thought the nicest effect was when the part of the lore of the ice god was that his horns have been ripped off, and as he gets them back on his head, the way they shift around kind of looked like it was 80s stop motion, like a Phil Tippin type thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was impressed with that part aspect of the movie. Yeah,
Right, just the writing set it or let it down, and like I think it's because they were trying to, like we said before, they're trying to do too much because we left out the fact that the surviving original Ghostbusters plus Janine are all over the place and they unite for one last time to help out with the last fight.
yeah, and they don't really do that much.
No, one could argue that wait, the previous movie was the passing of the torch movie, and while Dan Aykroyd was the best part of this movie,
Mhm.
did he really need to be there?
Yeah, well, the only reason they were there was to try to they did something to do something with the chamber, the ghost where the ghosts were being kept. the vault.
Right, but
Yeah.
but I think that the trouble is that the original or the surviving Ghostbusters, minus Bill Murray, who was barely in it,
Mm.
they basically ate up a lot of space in the movie that should have gone to the other characters.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't really know anything about Paul Rudd that you didn't know in the previous movie, or Carrie Coon's character, or Finn for that matter. You just know he doesn't like Slimer. So
Yeah. Yeah, they were definitely trying to keep Phoebe as the main character, and it just wasn't. But there was just so many other elements to it that she was it was just she was getting drowned out from it, drowned out from all of them.
yeah. Now I will say I understand having Dan have a major role because Ghostbusters is his baby. It's
Hmm.
like as long as he's still kicking and able to act in movies, giving him a big cameo part like this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just that they had too many elements and they needed to subtract a few to make it really work.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would say overall, yeah, pretty disappointing, and as as Ching has pointed out uh, earlier, pretty mid.
Yeah, that's kind of the worst thing you could be. Like, people are still talking about Batman v Superman or the Snyder Cut or the less about Rebel Moon. I haven't seen anybody bother to do like any sort of review of the director's cuts that I think because I think the first one has already dropped.
Oh, really?
Because I think I saw like Netflix was telling me that the second director's cut of Rebel Moon was dropping,
uh,
or the second half. So I guess there is a shelf life for cringe.
yeah,
And I,
yeah,
but I think this is just going to be totally forgotten. And with the reception this got, I don't know that the cold shoulder, if you will.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
uh, I don't know that they'll necessarily get another swing at the bat.
yeah. Especially given the age of the original Ghostbusters actors. I mean, I think Murray and well, I don't know how I think Murray's like in his early. Murray and Aykroyd, I think, are in their early 70s, but like Ernie Hudson, I want to say is like in his late 70s.
Yeah, I mean he looks good for his age,
He
but
does, yeah. But yeah, yeah, they really dropped the ball on this one, which is unfortunate.
unfortunately.
Yeah.